The world does not divide between the good and the wicked. It divides between those who face truth and those who run from it. Every century invents new words to hide its fear: prudence, decency, balance. But beneath these words lies the same trembling instinct, the refusal to see what is. To live in truth is to live without shelter. And that, my friend, is what man fears most. Cowardice is not an exception. It is the rule. It is the hidden religion of the human race worship of safety, obedience, belonging. From the cradle to the grave, man kneels before his own shadow, praying that no one will notice. He fears not death, but exposure. He fears not pain, but the stripping away of illusion. He would rather rot in comfort than awaken in anguish. They tell you courage is a virtue, but virtue is what cowards invent to decorate their fear. The brave have no virtue, only clarity. They act because they must, not because the crowd approves. Listen to the silence beneath civilization. It hums with the sound of submission. The millions march in perfect rhythm, not because they believe, but because they are afraid to stop. And every step echoes with the same hidden prayer: don't make me see myself. Look around you. The office clerk pretending his life matters. The preacher selling forgiveness like opium. The politician trembling behind slogans of virtue. The influencer moralizing for applause. Each hides the same wound: terror of insignificance. The human animal has learned to hide its fear beneath moral language. But strip away the robes of righteousness, and you will find a small creature clutching comfort like a crucifix. We are not ruled by reason, but by refuge, by the desperate need to be safe, even from truth itself. Society, morality, progress, all are masks woven by the trembling will. Cowardice has simply learned to dress well. Every human heart carries a small, trembling center, the will to live. From that root springs every flower of fear. For to desire life is to dread its loss. And the more one clings, the more one trembles. Fear is not an intruder. It is the pulse of existence itself. It is the echo of the will's attachment, the shadow cast by wanting. He who has much to protect has much to fear. And so civilization grows more cowardly with every possession it accumulates. Cowardice begins where attachment begins. The moment man says, "This is mine," he has built his first prison. He who wants nothing can face everything. He who wants everything must hide from himself. In the marketplace of modern souls, bravery is myth. Fear is the economy. People sell their conscience for stability, their thoughts for approval, their time for the illusion of control, and yet they call it responsibility. They bow to fear and call it wisdom. They obey and call it maturity. The coward is not evil. He is merely honest in his weakness, though he will not admit it. He shapes his identity around belonging, not being. He does not live, he adjusts. He does not speak, he echoes. He survives by dissolving into the crowd. To understand cowardice is to see the architecture of the ego itself. The self is a fortress, built from fear every belief, a brick against uncertainty. The coward must defend his image, for it is all he has. And so he becomes an actor in the theater of acceptance. Watch him at work. He speaks only what others wish to hear. He dresses as he is told. He nods when he should question. He kneels when he should stand. And each small obedience becomes a rehearsal for death, the slow suffocation of the soul. Fear has learned to disguise itself as virtue. Caution becomes wisdom. Conformity becomes politeness. Cowardice becomes kindness. The moral man is often the most frightened of all, terrified of what he might be if stripped of approval. And so, the world praises those who blend in. Society loves nothing more than the agreeable slave. The crowd will forgive cruelty sooner than independence. Cowardice hides behind every polite smile. It smiles at injustice, bows to mediocrity, and applauds lies to avoid exile. The coward's true terror is solitude, the only condition where truth is heard. Every man tells himself a single lie: I am good because I am afraid. He confuses fear with morality, obedience with virtue. But goodness born of fear is not goodness, it is paralysis. It is the silence of the enslaved heart, pretending to be noble. They call their trembling peace. They call their submission harmony. But peace without truth is only a coma. Look at the moralist, his pride, his certainty, his trembling hand pointing at the sinner. He despises others not because they are evil, but because they are free. His morality is envy wearing the mask of holiness. He cannot forgive those who dare. Cowardice and morality dance in perfect symmetry. The moral code becomes the defense mechanism of the weak. It allows them to condemn what they cannot face in themselves. They say, "You must not," because they dare not. They say, "That is wrong," because it frightens them. They invent sin to justify their surrender. Even religion, that towering edifice of human devotion, is a monument to fear. Man trembles before the unknown, so he invents a fatherly God to promise protection. He obeys not out of love, but terror of abandonment. And when he calls this submission faith, he sanctifies cowardice itself. Fear disguised as virtue, submission disguised as devotion, cowardice disguised as morality. This is the true trinity of the modern soul. Imagine the faceless multitude moving as one, eyes lowered, hearts synchronized to the drumbeat of safety. No one dares step aside. No one dares stop marching. For to stop is to see, and to see is unbearable. One dares to whisper, "This is madness." The crowd turns upon him, howling not from anger, but from panic. He has broken the spell, and they will destroy him to restore their peace. This is how societies maintain order through collective cowardice. Each individual sacrifices his own clarity to preserve the illusion of harmony. The herd survives by devouring those who stand still. But the brave man, the one who refuses to kneel, is not their enemy. He is their mirror, and that is why they hate him. They sense that his solitude contains a freedom their obedience will never touch, and so they mock what they envy, condemn what they secretly desire. In every age, the courageous are crucified, not because they are wrong, but because they remind the world of its fear. Every night, in the privacy of their thoughts, the cowards pray the same prayer. "Let me be accepted. Let me be safe. Let me not be seen." And they wake the next day wearing the armor of routine, pretending it is a life. But somewhere within them, faint, barely audible, there is a scream. The dying echo of what they might have been. They think courage is a matter of conquest, of war, of grand gestures. But true courage begins in the smallest act, the refusal to lie to oneself. Måste man never They fear what the mirror might say, so they decorate their reflection with titles, virtues, and masks, and call that living. There is a strange tenderness in this tragedy. Cowardice is not a moral defect. It is the shadow of being human. To exist is to fear, but to refuse to look at that fear is to die before dying. The coward suffers most, not from danger, but from self-deception. He must constantly disguise his trembling with words, rules, and symbols. He must live in denial of his own fragility, clutching illusions as lifeboats on a calm sea. But the sea is never calm forever. Fear is the first truth of life. Cowardice is its first lie. The moment you see both clearly, something within you begins to wake, and that awakening is not comfort. It is not joy. It is the quiet horror of realizing that most people you've ever met, including yourself, have lived not by courage, but by compromise. But in that horror, there is a strange light. For to see cowardice is to finally stand outside it. And from that vantage, however, lonely begins the first taste of freedom. Cowardice, clothed in morality, becomes the machinery of civilization. Every era builds a stage upon which man can hide from himself, and calls that stage progress. The first illusion was God, not the divine mystery, but the convenient father, the eternal authority under whose shadow man could remain a child. In his fear of existence, man projected his trembling upward and worshipped his own dependency. He did not seek truth, he sought protection, and the heavens became his padded cell. He prayed not to understand, but to be forgiven. He confessed not to awaken, but to be absolved of courage. The churches became monuments to this quiet fear, cathedrals built by trembling hands, singing hymns of surrender. Then came the philosophers, the reformers, the moral engineers. They replaced the gods with ideas, reason, progress, equality, but the psychology remained the same. Mastilboed, only now before abstractions. He traded confession for opinion, syn för socialt, priests for bureaucrats. The altar had changed, but the fear had not. Cowardice, when refined by intellect, becomes ideology. When fear wears the robe of logic, it gains followers. The modern moralist no longer prays to heaven. He tweets to the crowd. He fears divine punishment less than public disapproval. But both are the same ghost, the terror of standing alone. Listen to the modern confessions. Don't cancel me. Don't offend. Don't make me think differently. Quote, they sound pious, but they are only echoes of fear. The herd no longer needs a shepherd. It polishes itself. The brave man is no longer burned at the stake. He is ignored, mocked, erasit. Exile has become digital, and silence is the new hell. The world congratulates itself for being enlightened, but enlightenment, stripped of courage, is just a brighter form of cowardice. We call our conformity empathy, our timidity tolerance. Quote, we say everyone is entitled to their opinion, because no one dares to have one. Our age has perfected cowardice by turning it into a virtue. You no longer need to kneel, you only need to fit in. Modern man no longer worships gods, he worships comfort. He bows before convenience and prays to technology for deliverance. Each new device is a promise. You will never feel alone again. But loneliness is not the problem. It is the price of being awake. The coward prays for distraction. He cannot sit with himself, so he scrolls, consumes, builds a digital echo chamber to drown the silence. He calls this connection. But what he really seeks is anesthesia. The market is his temple, the brand, his totem. He no longer says, I believe. He says, I buy. And every transaction whispers the same incantation. Keep me safe from emptiness. Civilization is a theater of well-dressed panic. Every career, every ideology, every obsession with status is a stage performance of survival. The fear of nothingness is rehearsed as ambition. The fear of rejection is masked as humility. The fear of insignificance, that ancient terror of the void, is disguised as the hunger for success. We are all actors performing courage for an audience of cowards, and we applaud each other for it. Morality, in its purest form, is the collective language of cowardice. It exists not to elevate the soul, but to make fear cooperative. A moral code allows the fearful to live together without ever confronting the truth of their nature. Bekind says society, but what it really means is be agreeable. Be tolerant, it says, meaning don't disturb my illusions. The moral man obeys not because he understands, but because disobedience terrifies him. He fears the burden of individuality. He fears the glare of solitude. He fears being seen for what he is, a trembling will in an indifferent universe. And so, morality becomes the last refuge of cowards. Not a ladder to virtue, but a wall against reality. When a man cannot face himself, he builds systems to justify his blindness. He invents words like right and wrong, hoping to domesticate the abyss. But the abyss does not obey language. It waits silent, patient, eternal, and in the quiet moments of honest reflection, it stares back. Every coward lives two lives, the one the world sees, and the one he hides inside. Outwardly, he smiles, he obeys. He builds a life of small certainties, so no one suspects the trembling beneath. But inwardly, his soul is a battlefield of hesitations. He cannot sleep without noise. He cannot wake without distraction. He fears silence because it reveals his captivity. He is not free. He is not wicked. He is simply afraid of himself. In the darkness of his mind, he rehearses every word he will say tomorrow. Every gesture is calculated, every thought edited for approval. He lives as though the world were always watching, and perhaps it is. But the gaze he fears most is his own. He avoids solitude like a wound he cannot look at. He surrounds himself with people, noise, movement, not from love, but from terror of stillness. He fears the quiet not because it is empty, but because it contains everything he has avoided. At night, his conscience is not moral, it is anxious. It whispers questions that no sermon can answer. What am I? Why am I afraid? And so he scrolls, he drinks, he prays, anything to drown the unbearable hum of being alive. Safety is expensive. To remain unexposed, he must amputate what is real. He silences instinct. He censors thought. He trades authenticity for belonging, and in doing so, he becomes less than human, a reflection trapped in the mirror of approval. He believes he is safe, but what he calls safety is only slow decay, for nothing grows in the soil of fear. The coward's comfort is his coffin, lined with routine, padded with politeness. He confuses numbness with peace, and calls his resignation wisdom. But beneath the calm exterior lies the static of despair, a low vibration of unlived life. Every time he says yes to what he hates, he strangles the last flicker of his soul. Every time he avoids the truth to protect comfort, he digs his grave a little deeper. And the world applauds him for it. The coward secretly envies those who dare. He mocks them publicly, but worships them in silence. He calls them reckless, arrogant, extreme, but at night, he dreams of having their freedom. He watches the man who speaks truth and feels both hatred and longing. Hatred, because that man exposes his impotence. Longing, because that man still burns. Envy is the coward's confession. He despises courage because it reveals his chains, and so he hides his humiliation in mockery. He points at the brave and says, "Fool!" But his trembling hand betrays admiration. Imagine him now, standing before the mirror. His reflection stares back, stripped of performance. He sees not the villain he feared, but a frightened child clutching excuses like toys. He realizes the tragedy. His life has been an elaborate avoidance of truth, and yet, in that moment, something shifts. He no longer wants to pretend. He no longer wishes to be safe. He feels, perhaps for the first time, the cold wind of reality on his skin. And it is not unbearable. It is clean. It is honest. Cowardice, once exposed, begins to dissolve. It cannot survive in the open air. For cowardice feeds on illusion, and illusion dies in light. To see one's fear clearly is the first act of courage. Not to conquer it, not to escape it, but to meet it face to face, without disguise, without justification, without prayer. That moment is the beginning of awakening. It is the crack in the wall of habit, the faint whisper of the real. The coward's hell is not punishment. It is repetition, a loop of avoidance, a life spent dodging the mirror. But for the one who dares to stop running, hell transforms into clarity. And clarity, though cold, is the first taste of freedom. Courage has been misunderstood. It is not the roar of conquest, nor the defiance of kings. It is the quiet refusal to kneel before illusion. To be courageous is not to fight without fear. It is to see fear clearly and still not turn away. Courage begins where the need for victory ends. It is not the soldier charging into battle, but the thinker staring into the abyss without blinking. It is not the hero adored by crowds, but the solitary one who renounces their applause. Schopenhauer knew to live is to suffer, to desire is to enslave oneself, and to see this truth, to really see it, is the beginning of liberation. The courageous man does not shout. He simply stops pretending. He strips his desires down to the bone until nothing remains but what cannot be taken. And that is freedom. He who renounces illusion becomes untouchable. No insult can wound him, no loss can destroy him, for he has already accepted the futility of possession. The coward builds a fortress of denial. The courageous man stands naked in the storm. He has no armor, only awareness. And awareness, though it cuts like ice, is the only purity the soul will ever know. The courageous man is condemned to solitude. For when one sees clearly, the crowd becomes unbearable. Its chatter, its posturing, its self-deception, they ring hollow, like laughter in a graveyard. To walk alone is not a choice, but a consequence. When your vision pierces illusion, you no longer belong among those who worship it. He wanders through life like a ghost among sleepers. They call him cold, distant, detached. But his detachment is not pride, it is clarity. He no longer begs illusions to feed him. He no longer hungers for belonging among the blind. To the coward, solitude is hell. To the courageous, it is sanctuary. For in solitude, there are no mirrors to distort the truth, only the stillness of what is. And in that stillness, a strange beauty emerges, a beauty born not of joy, but of lucidity. Courage is not found in noise, but in silence, not in defiance, but in surrender to the real. The ultimate act of courage is not to fight endlessly, but to stop chasing meaning, to stop begging existence for comfort, to stop imagining that happiness is owed to you. The world owes nothing and never did. To accept this without bitterness, without escape, is to transcend the tyranny of the will. Renunciation is the purification of fear. It is the moment when the soul, exhausted from endless struggle, lets go not from despair, but from understanding. The coward clings to life as if it were a possession, The courageous one holds it lightly, like a leaf that falls when the wind calls. He does not fight fate, he walks beside it. He does not curse pain, he recognizes it as the signature of being. In this surrender there is no weakness. There is power, the quiet power of one who has ceased to beg. There is a sweetness in this kind of resignation. A peace that comes only when the war with reality ends. The coward's peace is anesthesia. The brave man's peace is awareness. One sleeps, the other sees. Never has humanity been so loud about its virtue and so silent about its fear. We have replaced gods with gadgets, but our trembling remains the same. We have exchanged priests for influencers, but the sermons continue, preached not from pulpits, but from screens. Modernity did not destroy cowardice. It industrialized it. Technology became the perfect mirror for fear, a global echo chamber where no one must face silence again. We call it connection, but it is dependence, a network of digital crutches built by those too afraid to limp alone. We live in an age where exposure is death. One wrong word, one unpopular truth, and the mob descends. A world where courage is punished not by execution, but by isolation. We no longer burn heretics. We simply delete them. Civilization, in its essence, is a shelter, a pact among the terrified. We build systems, rituals, and hierarchies to defend ourselves from the vastness of the unknown. We invent purpose to distract from futility. We call this meaning. Each generation adds another layer of insulation, more comfort, more distraction, more noise. And with every new convenience, humanity grows softer, duller, more compliant. We have mastered survival, but forgotten existence. Our comforts have not freed us, they have embalmed us. Comfort is not the opposite of suffering. It is the slow suffocation of the soul. We have built a new God, the collective opinion, a deity that demands constant worship and immediate obedience. People no longer think they perform. They do not believe they brand. The truth has become a costume, tailored to fit the mood of the crowd. In this theater, the bravest act is silence. To withhold an opinion is now an act of rebellion. To speak honestly is an act of treason. We mistake noise for intelligence, outrage for morality, agreement for truth. But truth, real truth, has no audience. It whispers only to those who can endure being ignored. Our age sells fear disguised as necessity. Every advertisement whispers, "You are not enough." Every product promises to make you safer, smarter, desirable, and every purchase tightens the leash around your will. Consumerism is the coward's paradise. It allows one to feel in control without ever confronting the void. We do not buy to express freedom. We buy to decorate our prison. The market does not sell goods. It sells anesthesia. It numbs the ache of existence with endless stimulation until the individual forgets that silence was once sacred. We fear boredom because boredom reveals truth. We fear stillness because stillness unmasks the will. And so we stay busy, terrified of the moment when we might truly see. Every government is built on one unspoken truth. The crowd would rather obey than think. The tyrant does not impose fear, he inherits it. He rules with the permission of the cowardly. No dictator can exist without the silent consent of those who fear disorder more than injustice. And so the citizen kneels, whispering that he is practical. He tells himself he is powerless, and in believing it, he becomes so. Obedience disguised as virtue, submission marketed as safety. This is the political masterpiece of the age. Freedom terrifies the coward. Responsibility crushes him. He would rather trade his soul for comfort than his comfort for truth. The brave man, seeing this, withdraws. He does not fight the herd. He steps aside from it. He lets it trample itself, while he walks quietly toward the horizon where the noise cannot reach. Cowardice has never been so sophisticated, never so polite, never so celebrated. We dress our fear in humanitarian language, our submission in progress, our emptiness in luxury. We mistake motion for meaning and attention for worth. The world no longer burns witches. It rewards them with followers. It no longer crucifies prophets. It drowns them in applause. And still, beneath it all, the ancient trembling remains. The same creature, the same will, the same fear, only more eloquent, more comfortable, more lost. Only by knowing his cowardice does man begin to awaken. Not by conquering fear, but by seeing it naked, unadorned, unashamed. This is the turning point of every real life, not the moment of triumph, but of exposure. When all disguises fall, when every comforting lie evaporates, and one stands alone, face to face with a trembling that has governed every choice. Most people spend their lives defending their fear. They build philosophies, careers, families, empires, all to hide from that silent, pulsing truth, that they are terrified of existing without justification. But the moment you stop running, when you finally let the fear consume you, something astonishing happens. It burns through you and leaves nothing behind but clarity. You realize that the terror was never an enemy, only a mirror. It showed you what you truly valued, what you truly clung to. And in seeing it clearly, you can finally release it. The coward resists the truth. The courageous one surrenders to it. And in surrender, the distinction between fear and freedom dissolves. When illusion collapses, there is a silence so complete, it almost feels divine. Not the silence of death, but of unveiling. The noise of pretense, the theater of justification, falls away like the skin of a snake. You discover that all the things you defended so fiercely, your beliefs, your reputation, your pride, were only costumes for your terror of the void. The truth was always simple. You are afraid, and that is all right. The entire machinery of morality, the architecture of civilization, the sedatives of distraction, they exist because man could not accept this simplicity. But when you stop lying, when you say to yourself, yes, I am afraid, without resistance or excuse, something ancient shifts. Fear loses its grip. It no longer hides beneath guilt or pride. It simply is. And what simply is cannot enslave. This is not courage in the heroic sense. It is clarity, a lucidity that no system can grant, and no crowd can share. To stand there stripped of every illusion, untouched by every comfort, seeing life as it is, that is the quietest kind of freedom. The will, Schopenhauer's blind, ceaseless force, was never your servant. It was your master. It compelled you to chase, to cling, to desire, and in doing so, it made you afraid. Fear is the echo of the will. Every I want contains a trembling, what if I lose? Every I must have contains the ghost of I might not. And so existence becomes a cycle of hunger and dread. But there is a point beyond the will, the still center from which awareness watches the dance. When you reach it, the noise quiets, the hunger softens, and fear, that ancient reflex, becomes transparent. It was never the world that terrified you. It was your own attachment to it. When the hand releases the rope, the pain of holding vanishes. This is liberation, not escape from the world, but release from the compulsion to clutch it. Imagine standing at dawn after a long night of storm. The world is still wet, bruised but alive. No applause greets you, no music rises, only wind and the sound of your own breathing. You are not fearless. You are free. Fear may still whisper, but it no longer commands. You see it for what it is, a small, ancient mechanism of the flesh, nothing more. And in that awareness, something vast awakens. Not joy, not victory, but serenity. You have become what the coward fears most, a being who no longer begs life to be kind. He who accepts fear without resistance is already free. This is the quiet paradox at the end of all striving. When you cease to demand safety, existence ceases to threaten you. The coward hides from pain. The wise man lets pain speak. The coward worships security. The wise man walks without walls. To resign is not to surrender to despair. It is to awaken from illusion. To see that the game was always unwinnable and that the beauty of it was never in victory, but in awareness itself. There comes a moment when even philosophy falls silent. Words, once weapons, become soft. Concept dissolve. All that remains is a pulse, a breath, a gaze that neither clings nor condemns. You realize there is nothing to fear, because there is no you left to be threatened. The will, that engine of suffering, has quieted, if only for a moment. And in that stillness, you taste the essence of peace. Not triumph, not joy, just the absence of struggle, the lightness of nothing to defend. The coward dies 1,000 small deaths each time he resists the inevitable. The brave man dies once. When he accepts it, the mirror waits as it always does. You stand before it, The same face, the same eyes, but the gaze is no longer afraid. You do not seek to impress or justify. You simply look and see. For the first time, the reflection does not accuse. It understands. It forgives. It dissolves. And what remains is not pride, not even identity, but silence. The silence of one who has nothing left to prove. The silence that follows truth. The silence that perhaps was God all along. The mirror waits, as it always does. You stand before it, the same face, the same eyes, but the gaze is no longer afraid. You do not seek to impress or justify. You simply look and see. For the first time, the reflection does not accuse. It understands. It forgives. It dissolves. And what remains is not pride, not even identity, but silence. The silence of one who has nothing left to prove. The silence that follows truth. The silence that perhaps was God all along. The world is afraid. The crowd is its own prison. But one man stands still. He has lost everything that can be taken, and in doing so has found what cannot. He does not smile. He does not weep. He simply is. And in that stillness, the wind passes through him. Unresisted, unclaimed, unafraid. That is freedom. Not glory, not victory. Just the pure, unornamented peace of having nothing left to lose.